Alrighty, welcome to episode 10 of Sports Talk with Duey podcast. It's one of my favorite times of the year, getting ready for the college basketball season, especially the Pitt basketball season. And I couldn't have a better guest to preview the Pitt basketball season than Pittsburgh Sports Now, the Portal Report, the best reporter for Pitt basketball, analyst, insider, whatever role that George Michalowski. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate the intro there. Thanks.
So, how have you been since the national championship, the off season, the college basketball season is extremely hectic now. So, you started your own podcast, the Pittsburgh Basketball Show, which has been amazing. And you've been traveling around the country for the Portal Report, visiting coaches. So how's your off season been?
It's been good, man. Yeah, thanks for asking. It's really an interesting time. Like as soon as the tournament gets going every March, things get even busier with the portal for us. So like I'm covering the team, also doing our work for the Portal Report, helping college basketball coaches recruit transfers. So kind of doubling down in that March-April time. Dies down a bit during the summer, but people are still filling out rosters pretty much until July. There's a consistent couple of players that are joining each team. Pitt, luckily, for them, and I guess for myself as someone who covers the team, filled out their roster pretty quickly. Amsal comes in a bit later, but relatively speaking, like they had some time to get to know this team in the offseason and, for us to just kind of get to know them and start to see what they're going to be working with this year. So yeah, man, it's been good. I'm pumped to get going here into the season. October 22nd, right? That Point Park date has come out of nowhere. It feels like football just started, and now Pitt's got a 6-0 football team and a lot of anticipation for this hoop season. So like it's a good time to be in this area, a fan of college sports.
Yeah, it's definitely a good time to be a Pitt athletics fan. It's been super exciting. Last season, unfortunately, we missed out on the NCAA tournament. We did really well to start the season against like the cupcake opponents. Then we just struggled. We got blitzed by Florida. Then we lost 2 games to Syracuse, got blown out by Duke. It was definitely a tough, season for us. Then we turned it around. Jalen Lowe looked like a lottery pick. We basically won like mostly every game to end the season. It looked like we were on the bubble. And the big reason why we didn't make it was because our weak non-conference schedule. That was the big talk about everything. So what was your total take on last season for Pitt basketball?
Yeah, I'm going to echo what I've heard Jeff Capel say, countless times now since last season ended. They didn't know that Missouri was going to be that bad. They didn't know that West Virginia was going to be that bad. It really killed them. I don't think you can say that season was a total bust. I think, number one, this kind of sounds like Neil Brown, but Pitt fans are going to remember that season for a long time. Blake Hinson, Bub Carrington, just those 2 names will always be names that Pitt fans remember and Capel and the staff remember for being special. Like it was a special year. They just, didn't get enough wins. And yeah, like I just said, they didn't know Missouri would be that bad, but they lost to Missouri on their home court. Like that's pretty unacceptable in the first place, even if Missouri was good. Like you want to beat that team at home in that ACC SEC challenge. But like we said, like Blake Hinson, absolute star. His coming out party was the year before, but he was like not a role player in terms of like a bench guy, but like, he was the shooter. He was the fun shooter on that 2023 team. This past year, he was the guy. Like he was the leader. And that whole dynamic going from like, I would describe as like a Kobe-like mindset from JB to Blake Hinson, where he's just like the loudest guy every time he walks into the gym. He's talking to reporters about how he plays Madden and watches like Baker Mayfield highlights at night. And like this guy is your leader, and he's also dropping like, 7 straight threes at Duke and standing on the scorer's table. Like there's a lot to remember from last year. Capel's first one and done prospect at Pitt, Bub Carrington. And there's just a lot of, excitement building into this year. So I don't think it's a total bust when we look back at last year. I don't think Capel or anyone in that building thinks so. Obviously, the result wasn't the one that they were chasing. But with that being said, there was a lot of good that came out of last year. I still think the program's on like that upward trajectory, especially when we look at the first 4 years of his tenure. So a lot of good came out of last year, and that includes some of the guys coming back. Jalen Lowe, we could talk about him all day. Ish Leggett. I mean, some of these guys, Zach Austin, there's room for improvement there. Like you saw flashes. So there's some exciting pieces on this year's team that came out of last year. So I wouldn't say it was a total bust or anything. But, this year I think there's no excuse to miss the NCAA tournament for them.
Man, I totally forgot about that Missouri game. You're right. Like Missouri was, I mean, they were like everyone had them making the tournament before last season. They like didn't win
Yeah.
one game in the SEC. It was like so odd. And when we lost them, it was like, oh, I'm pretty sure Missouri lost to like HBCU the game before, so like we shouldn't be losing that game. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
a great. I kind of forgot about that game.
Yeah. I mean, it was tough, like, to look back on that if you're capable, I'm sure, because, like, at the time, I think we all thought, like, okay, Pitt should beat this team, but, like, it's Missouri. Dennis Gates is an up-and-coming coach with a lot of respect around the country. They went to the tournament the year before, this is early in the season. Every time you get these ACC, SEC, whatever, it used to be the Big Ten ACC Challenge, like, every time you get those games, it's not like a surefire win, even if you get Northwestern, like Pitt got a few years in a row, or, a team in these leagues like Missouri. So it just ended up killing them. I mean, they didn't do enough elsewhere to make the dance. But again, I don't think we'll look back on that year and say, this is why, Capel should be gone, or this is why the program's heading back in the wrong direction. Like, no shot in my mind when we look at last year to say anything like that.
I did think it was a successful season because I think a lot of people around this area thought we were dead and we are just going to tank the rest of the season. But man, that team bounced back and
Yeah.
I mean, they only lost like 2 games down the stretch. They went to Duke and won. They almost beat North Carolina in the ACC tournament. We won that huge game against Wake in the ACC tournament. Like that team fought their butt off to get back in the tournament picture. It was an amazing coaching job by Capel, and I credit the players too. It was honestly an awesome sight to see them just fighting their tails off to get back in the picture. So I agree, and I agree. I think Bub was such a big success last season. He's a guy we could use in recruiting pitches for a long time. Like, oh, you want to come in and be the next Bub Carrington? You could be a 3-star and make the NBA. So
You're already seeing it, right? Like
yeah,
Amari Witherspoon, I mean, the guy is like, seems like he's Bub 2.0, like a DMV kid.
yeah.
Like same size, same sort of position. I mean, you hear little differences about their game. I haven't seen him in person yet, so I'm not gonna, judge his skill set or anything. But like, it seems to have worked in that recruiting pitch already.
Yeah, exactly. I'm super excited for him. I watched his highlights. He looks amazing. Can't have enough of the players from the DMV. So yeah, Capel's doing a great job, and I think last year we didn't make tournament like obviously, but like you said, I think it was a positive season for us, even though we missed out in the tournament.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, 2 straight seasons of being predicted. I wrote about it the other day. I think in the preseason poll, and obviously I mean, I'm a media member. I could say those don't mean anything. But, like, the expectations from the outside were, like, 8th to 11th place in the ACC. They may have even been lower than 11th 2 years ago, the expectation.
Wasn't 2 years ago we were like 14th or something?
Yeah, I think it was 14th. Like, they were picked 14th, and they finished tied for 3rd. Last year, they finished in 4th. So, like, I mean, you never want to make excuses. They didn't get the job done, plain and simple, but, like, we could have a conversation, and Capel has kind of talked like this too. Like, there's a conversation to be had that, like, the 4th-place team in the ACC should never have to worry about one of their non-conference losses to a team that they made the tournament the year prior. But anyways.
Yes. So talking about Capel in the offseason, he signed a 2-year extension. How do you feel about that extension, what Capel's done so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the program's clearly moving in the correct direction. I think most Pitt fans seem to be on board with that. I did see an article from a national writer the other day in his preseason predictions, like national, ranking 1 through 363 or whatever it was. And in it, he talked about Pitt, this not being, he was like saying like this isn't a make or break year for Capel, but like if it goes really bad, you could see him back on the hot seat. I completely disagree. I think that reporter missed the extension happening and doesn't really have a feel on what the Pitt fan base is feeling right now. I think Cable's got it in a great spot. I wrote about his staff last week. I think the staff is really gelling well right now. I think the recruiting's looking good. I mean, you see the Tony Bennett news, right? Like, Pitt has totally adapted to the new state of college basketball recruiting. Now, I'm not completely familiar with the state of Pitt's NIL and Pitt's plan for the house settlement when teams and schools can potentially be paying out these, $21 million and splitting that up. I'm not aware of how all of that is working into the plan right now. And because I saw that was mentioned in a few articles about Heather, losing her job and being referenced as a reason for that. With that being said, from what I've seen around college basketball, from what I've seen from Pitt, I am pretty confident that Pitt's transfer portal strategy, their NIL strategy, and their knowledge of the game and recruiting, I guess, expertise is in a really good place. There are a lot of schools out there who don't really have much of a plan going into the portal season, finishing off a year, whether it's a good year or a bad year. Like, you need a plan at this point. I mean, Tony Bennett retired over this, right? Like, if you don't have a plan, it can get very overwhelming, and I don't know all the reasons for that, but they've had a plan. They've executed it almost to a T the past few years in the portal. Still getting elite high school talent. I mean, Capel has lived up, I think, to that hype around his name where he's a good recruiter. Like, I think a lot of coaches would say that. I mean, even without looking at like rankings and stuff, like all that stuff aside, this guy has hit on numerous recruits from high school lately and transfers like Nelly, JB, Greg, Blake, Nike, just to name those guys from that 2023 team. Then you add in guys this year like Dame Dunn and Cam Corrin. I haven't seen all too much about Dame Dunn. I actually watched yesterday a preview show on the ACC by Adam Finkelstein and Isaac Schroeder at 24/7. They do a great job covering every conference of college basketball. I always watch. I mean, I think Amari Witherspoon announced his commitment with them. Like, they're always doing the recruiting stuff. They do a great job.
I think Bub did as well.
Yeah, Bub did as well. Right. I remember someone tweeted that, like, last time, Pitt was on the show, ended well. But they were talking about Pitt, and they were talking about the ACC, and they had Pitt in, like, the upper echelon of the ACC this year. The group of 5 teams where seems like they should be a tournament lock. I liked what they said because they brought up Damian Dunn and how people are kind of sleeping on him to be, a key piece. Like, you don't really see Dame Dunn in these impact transfer lists, and I guess we should probably put something out on the portal report if I'm saying it.
Good.
But, his numbers weren't, eye catching last year at Houston. But all of the intangibles seem to be there. All the coaches have raved about him. I mean, Milan Brown, they posted a video a few weeks ago. Milan Brown raving about him. Jeff Capel raves about him. They say they haven't had a physical guard like this since JB. They're high on the way that he can catch and shoot. He showed that at Temple in his first few years. So this guy, I think he's going to be really good. I don't know how exactly the starting lineup will look, but to be able to bring back Jalen and Ish, bring in a guy like Dame, and then have options down low that they haven't had in years, where you could go. I saw in their prediction they had Guillermo at the 4 and Cam at the 5. Obviously, Zach Austin's in the mix. Papa's in the mix. Amdi looks really good in the preseason footage. He's a freshman, so you never know. And then I haven't even mentioned Delalich yet, who I think is going to be really good. I mean, based on his film and his number, I mean, he made 82 threes last year in a pro league in Europe. Like, it's significant. So they have a lot of pieces. I think there's a lot to be excited about with this group, and I would say it's probably the deepest team that he's had. Like, I feel like every other year that he's been here, that I've been covering the team, we're talking about, usually later on in the season, we're talking about if this guy gets hurt, we're really thin. Like, all we got is like a Diaz Graham or two that can come. Like, when Fetty got hurt in that leading up to that first 4 game, I went on the fan before the game, and they were like, "Is he gonna play? Like, is he gonna play?" And that Federico, like, he was a great piece of that year's team. Like, don't get me wrong, like almost perfect piece to that year's team to complement all the shooting they had and the scoring. Like he did his job at an elite level as a rim runner. Like he was really good. But this year it's just different. Like they have versatile big men who can score, who can pass, who can defend the rim. Like it's just a different outlook this year. So I don't even know where I was headed on that tangent. We ended up going through pretty much everyone on the roster. That's what we do, right?
Yep. So
Yeah.
I kind of ask you more about these incoming freshmen. I
Yeah.
thought it was a really good freshman class. Biba, Nelly, I love Nelly Cummings. I'm so happy to have another Cummings on Pitt Basketball. Amdi, like you've said, looked really good in these videos. And of course, Amsal, like a 21-year-old veteran freshman from he played in Bosnia. So yeah, talk about those guys and what they bring to the table for Pitt this season.
Yeah, well, I asked Amsal, I interviewed him a few months ago, and I kind of asked him that, like, what do you bring to the table? Like, what are Pitt fans going to be able to expect from you? And his first answer was shooting. Like, so you can clearly see he's known for, and he knows himself as like a wing shooter. I think we've seen from the clips that they've posted that he can handle the ball too. He can pass the ball. That whole European style is just different. The way that they grow up over there playing hoops, it's like a lot of times you can't have more than 2 dribbles in these practices that they're growing up with. And, they're practicing with a shot clock from the age of 6. Like it's all different over there. So I think they're going to get a really good shooter out of Amsal. I mean, I know it's a really tough injury to hurt your shooting hand about 6 weeks before the season. Cable said they're hopeful he's back before that date. So that sounded like they were pretty optimistic about that when he talked about that in the press conference recently. Other than Amsal, Hamdi, again, I kind of thought of him as more of a project, to be honest, just because of that depth in the front court. And Cable did say a couple weeks ago that they didn't plan on redshirting anyone at this moment. But who knows what's going to happen, as the season starts here. Hamdi, I think, looks really good. Like he's looked more versatile than I thought. You kind of picture him as like a rim running guy like Fetty, just based on build. And they talk about how athletic he is and, how high he can jump and how his motor works all the time. And, they have good things to say about him, but I wasn't familiar with his game. Like when I saw that video they posted the other day of him, dribble drive, like dishing to a teammate for a dunk, it's noteworthy. So he should be really exciting. It's just tough because you have Papa, who comes in as a redshirt freshman, is like he's clearly the more physical. Obviously, he was the higher ranked one, but again, I don't think they, care at all about those rankings or who came in as a 5-star, who came in as a 2-star, whatever. But Papa's there. Papa seems to be the physical, bruiser down low. And then you've got Amsal. So Papa, Amsal. Then you got Biba. I don't know if you saw him in high school around here, but
Not really, no. I just heard he's a bucket.
yeah, man. I mean, he had the ball in his hands a lot. Like he played with Malik, but it was their show. He's good at setting up his teammates, but that kid's a scorer. I think in that they had like a closed scrimmage against the alumni a few months ago before TBT. I wasn't there. I think it was like Alliance 412 members or something. But I had heard from some people who were there that, Biba really surprised in a good way with his scoring ability, and his aggressiveness. Like that kid seems to be fearless. Seems like he'll take any shot. Capel told that great story the other day about him picking up Jalen Lowe, 94 feet from the first practice that he got to Pitt. It's a good sign, right? You want to hear that about freshmen coming in, to the program you're a fan of. So it's a great class. They've got a lot to work with. It's kind of interesting because like I didn't really think much of the freshman class before Delalic was here. I was kind of like, yeah, Papa's gonna be great to have as a backup big to Cam and Guillermo. Amdi and Biba looked like projects where you give them a year or two and they kind of develop into the rotation. But then they go out and get Amsal, and then they start posting all these clips, and Capel starts talking in press conferences. You hear more and more about Biba, about Amsal, about Amdi, and about Papa too. And it's like, gosh, like you had a guy who's shot made 82 threes last year in Europe, who's like 6'8". I mean, they posted a picture of him last weekend. I think it was at the Pitt football game, next to Papa, or maybe he posted it. Saw on one of their Instagrams, one of the players posted, and it was like Papa, Amdi, and Amsel or something like that. And he looked just as tall as Papa. So it's like this dude is legit like six. I think they said 6'7". Who knows if he's 6'8" or if those other guys are a bit shorter. Happens a lot. But you know, you add a wing with that size, who they called the Bosnian Bub, apparently. Bub Carrington let me know that one earlier this summer. So like I think they're ecstatic about this freshman class. I think we could see a lot more contributions from rookies this year than I expected. If you asked me this question, back in the spring. But yeah, man, it's a deep team.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about Damian Dunn. I'm super excited for him. He's another veteran guy. Either he's going to be starting or coming off the bench. But how about Cam Corrin? I mean, he came here against Pitt in conference play. He had like 22 points, a lot of free throws. He looked amazing. And Leonard Hamilton's definitely a guy that, he's kind of an old school coach. He'll hold back some of his players for like specific roles. So what have you seen from Cam Corrin? And could he be one of these other guys like Blake and Jabu just totally break out coming to Pitt?
I think he can. I mean, he's relentless on the offensive glass. I think that's the number one thing that sticks out when you kind of watch his film. I mean, even when you watch the film against Pitt last year, like that dude has a strong motor inside. He's a beast. Capel did mention he hasn't played over 20 minutes a game, so that'll be an adjustment. They want him to play significant minutes. I'd put 25 to 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
I'd mark him down for in a prediction, but I think he's just I keep saying this word, a very versatile big, that a type that Pitt hasn't seen in a while. I don't think he's very comfortable scoring in the post yet. That's what Capel was kind of saying the other day. I believe Chris Carter asked him that question about post scoring. Is he going to be the guy that you can throw it down to and score in the post? He's getting there from what Capel was saying. Like, it sounds like he'll be able to do that. Now it looks in his film like he's got a nice hook shot over, I believe, gosh, I wish I had it pulled up, over his left shoulder or his right shoulder. Like he had really good numbers last year from the block. Yeah, so I got to look into that more. But he gives you a lot, man. He's shown off his passing. They've highlighted that on their social media pages when they give out those little clips that he can pass the ball. He's a good lob catcher, runs rim to rim. Seems like he'll be an ideal pick and roll guy with Jalen Lowe. And those guys have played together since AAU ball when they were, I think Jalen was like a freshman in high school or something. So I think he's a great addition to the team. I think he's a very underrated addition. He doesn't pop up on our transfer rankings at the Portal Report or really anywhere else that I've seen into that like elite transfer category.
Mm-hmm.
But man, like, the market for big men in the portal it's just really rare that you find a big that good without overpaying. And again, I don't know the entire situation with Pitt's NIL. I don't know how much they're paying these guys. I don't ask those questions. They got that done quickly. They got him on campus quickly. They got him to commit quickly. That was a smooth, at least from my point of view. Sometimes we see kids scheduling 4 last-minute visits, and their recruitment's going all sorts of ways. Cam Corrin seemed pretty simple, and this is like high.
Same with Dunn too. Honestly, they both came in the same week, and they both committed, and that was it for our transfer class.
Exactly, man. It's like we see the craziest stories happen every year in the portal with like a school hopping in at the last minute with a bag, or
cough, Adu Tiero.
Or kids taking, 10 different visits or 5 different visits in 2 weeks and then adding another one and then removing visit. Like, there's all sorts of drama that goes on. These seemed like they were pretty much not, I don't want to say stress-free because there's no way in hell that they weren't stressing in recruiting season like that. But like, Pitt knew what they wanted out of the portal. They knew what positions they wanted to target out of the portal. They saw their guys hop in and they converted, man. It looked really, really efficient what they did in the portal, going out and getting Dame and Cam. And again, like the market for bigs, man, there are some mid-major bigs that barely produce that get a lot of money in the portal because they have big bodies, because they can block shots and stand down low and be a bruiser. Cam Corrin, I think he has a chance to average double-digit points and rebounds this year. I know he hasn't done it yet, but like his per 40 numbers are really good, just because I mean the minutes that he played at Florida State, and I think Pitt's going to use him a bit different, give him a little more freedom, give him more time, give him the ball. Like I think they're going to feel really comfortable with him.
That's awesome. And I watched a interview with, I think it was Rothstein and Mick Cronin. Or no, I don't think Rothstein. I think it was just Mick Cronin. Mick Cronin was saying like there's no such thing as program building in college basketball. You're seeing a lot of programs only bring back like one or two players as the total roster overhaul. But for Pitt, we're bringing back a lot of good contributors like J Lo, Ish, Zach, the twins, Papa, and Marlon Barnes. Marlon was redshirt and Papa was hurt, but they're still on the roster last year. So what's the value of bringing back pretty good contributors from last season?
Oh, it's tremendously valuable. I mean, in terms of contributors, like a lot of the points per game are going to come from those guys. A lot of the direction of the offense is going to start with Jalen Lowe. It's going to start with Ish. And then obviously the leadership, Jalen, Ish. I mean, even the twins, like those dudes are staples in Oakland. They have been for 3 years now.
Yep.
Like those guys coming back, especially as international guys, as they welcome in Sol and Amdi. It's super important to get those guys to return. Maybe their numbers haven't looked like you would have thought at this point for being 7-footers who are stretch wings and can shoot the ball. Like, I think Guillermo shot 40%, nearly 40% last
He
year
did, yeah.
in pick and pop situations off three, like with threes. So I think he's a great piece. I think Jorge's got it in him. Who knows if he'll have the opportunity there to figure that out just because of how deep this team is. But I think the guys coming back just provide so much from a leadership standpoint, and then obviously their games. But, man, you go into a season with Jalen Lowe and Ish Leggett in your backcourt, especially after watching that ACC tournament run. You were in D.C., right?
Yes, I was. Ish went off
Yeah,
against Wake. It was amazing.
man. Yeah, like watching that game, I think if anyone feels skeptical about, for whatever reason, about the Pitt backcourt this
They're
year,
crazy.
watch those couple of games. I remember watching Jalen Lowe again. I think I have a video of it. We were right behind the bench, so it's kind of an interesting setup. Like media is usually all right. We're like way up in the press box or whatever. I'm one of the belief that obviously we matter and I want to be able to get good coverage from the games, but like I don't care where we sit for a game. They had us right behind the Pitt bench. That was the first time all year that I've been like right behind the Pitt bench covering a game. And I remember, man, just coming out of those huddles and seeing like Jalen Lowe and Ish leading the way. Obviously, Bub was there too, Blake running the show. But Jalen, man, he had some big time shots. That game and the Duke game. Like I was down at Cameron for that game and watching him, he had like 2 3-pointers just off the dribble, just going right into Kyle Filipowski in the last like 3 minutes. One of them was with 40 seconds left. Like that, Capel said like the difference between Jalen freshman year and this year is he's just more comfortable in those moments, and he's just more comfortable being a good college basketball player. So, man, they return a lot. I mean, I don't know. I got to listen to that full Mick Cronin clip. I mean, we work with the portal all spring, all summer. I know coaches like to call it speed dating and they like to complain about it, but you can still build a program in this day and age. And Pitt is trending in that direction of building a stable culture and building a stable program that, gets them back to the tournament every year. They've gotten the talent. They've got the talent this year to do it. It seems like all of the off-court things that you want in a program are coming together. So just seeing the TBT team back in attendance, seeing the recruits, seeing the family atmosphere, it's trending in the right direction. I think for Pitt to build that program and build that culture around here.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Pitt basketball has always had the injury bug to start the season. Like every year, we always have, unfortunately, some banged up guys going into the season. And this year, so what's the injury status on? I mean, you've kind of already briefly talked about it, but what's injury status on Amsal, Jorge, and Papa?
Yeah, so I think Jorge and Papa are both pretty much completely cleared, unless I missed something that came out this week. From what I heard last, I'm pretty sure they're both full go in practice. Obviously, you're going to keep an eye on those injuries. Nothing to mess around with lower body stuff, especially Papa with the knee. Capel talked about the other day how it was so good to see Papa. I think he was going up for an offensive rebound or a dunk or something. He explained it in his press conference that it was so refreshing to see Papa not think about his knee and just go full speed ahead. And I think we're going to see a really aggressive. I'm excited. We're going to practice tomorrow to check out the team. So,
I'll be there too. I forgot.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm excited to watch Papa because it's like this guy, every high school scouting report said, tremendous motor. The guy doesn't stop. That's something you want to hear, but that's also something you hear about a lot of high school kids. Like, you see that on a lot of scouting reports. So I think he's going to be one to watch because you want him to be his full motor, full blow self, where he's going hard down low and he's setting hard picks and he's fighting through picks and, battling inside. Because you got Cam Corin, you got Guillermo, who can score the ball, who can be the touch guys around the rim and even step out. I think they're higher on Corin as a shooter than Florida State was. So you've got that already. I think Papa just coming in as a bruiser, coming in to get some rebounds could be a real big piece. So that knee, you're obviously going to want to monitor that. So again, I said a bit earlier, it's to his shooting hand, the injury. I don't know exactly what happened, but doesn't sound like they're too worried about him missing more than a couple games. That 6-week timeline, I believe, had him missing one game. If it was like 6 weeks to the date that they announced that. So if he misses the Radford game, so be it. It's one game. I think Pitt will be happy to get him back after that. But it's a shooting hand, and I broke my wrist before 8th grade tryouts, my shooting wrist. So I know it's a little different getting back into it. And for him, obviously, it's on a bigger scale. I mean, it's a hand injury, and he's not a world class, but compared to me, a world class shooter. Things are a bit different. Obviously, you don't want to hurt that shooting hand if you're a shooter, and he did. And it's going to take a bit of time, I'm sure, to get used to. But like Capel said, like he can do everything else. He can run. He'll stay in shape, I'm sure, and I'm sure he'll get that left hand going, dribbling wise and ball handling wise, and also schematically. Learning what they want to do, being in practice every day. It's different than a torn ACL, or it's different than something big like that where it holds you out of practice. You're not going to the football game with your buddies on the team. But we've seen Amsel everywhere. I mean, he's at all the Pitt football games with all the guys. Seems to be at all the practices. Don't know. Maybe we'll see him tomorrow. Who knows? But yeah. I think they're in a good spot injury wise. Again, like all that being said, last year, Capel kind of talked about I think it was at ACC Media Day. He did a bunch of interviews. May have been on the Field of 68 one that I watched. They asked him what was the turning point for Jalen Lowe. And Capel has said this since last year. He's like, well, he got healthy halfway through the year. Like, he still wasn't healthy. I don't even remember what the injury was.
I don't think they've ever disclosed it.
Yeah. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he finally got healthy, like, halfway through the year, maybe even a bit earlier than that. Or maybe later. I don't even remember the exact date.
His coming out game was that loss to Syracuse. He had 17 points. He was kind of dragging us and trying to win that game for us.
Yeah.
That was definitely the turning point for him. He was amazing. And ever since then, he was a star to end the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, his game log is surprisingly, when I look back at it, it's surprisingly good early because they described him as being hurt and battling through an injury and recovering still. So, yeah, his second half numbers were unbelievable for a freshman. People would argue who's better than Bub. I don't think that conversation does anyone any good.
No,
inside the building or around the program. It is what it is. Bub's doing just fine. So I think Pitt's just got to be happy that they had two freshmen that were that good last year.
So I'm gonna give you my projected starting five, and I'm gonna see if you agree with it. I think the starting five to start the season will be Jalen, Ish, Zach, Guillermo, and Cam Corin. Do you think that's a realistic starting lineup, or do you think it'll be something different?
I definitely think it's realistic. I'm going to wait till I see practice tomorrow to see if I think it'll be different. I still think people are underestimating Dame Dunn. I mean, Houston was unbelievable last year.
Yep.
And 2 years ago out of the portal, nobody could get in touch with that kid. Like, he had every school calling him.
He was really good at Temple.
And seems like he's got his head on his shoulders. I mean, seems like a great kid. Not kid, like he's a veteran.
Yeah, he's been around.
Yeah, seems like a good dude. I mean, seems like a great leader. We saw, I think it was after one of the TBT games, he was out, and I know they do this all the time, so it's not a huge deal. But he was out there at like 11 p.m. getting up jumpers when no one else was in the
Yeah,
gym.
I saw your tweet.
Yeah, and I know some comments were like, big whoop, like it's wide open jumpers. The point of that wasn't that he made like whatever 60% or whatever. But the point of that was like, all right, he could be doing a lot of other stuff in the middle of the summer in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of other stuff to do at 11 p.m. I think it was like a Friday night or a Saturday night. And he was in there shooting jumpers. So, I mean, good role model, it seems. Seems like all the guys love him. It seems like he's very integrated with the whole team, and they all kind of gel together from what we've seen. And who knows, we may see something different at practice. He may be more of a quiet guy. But it seems like, and when we've talked to him, when I interviewed him, I got a good feeling about him. So, all that being said, I would not be shocked to see Dame in the starting lineup, and you're looking at something there. Man, like it wouldn't even be weird because he's like 6'5", 200. Like, he's a big dude. Like, that's a
Dang.
wing for a lot of teams, but I think a lot of people just look at him as a guard here. He kind of plays that way, but he's a big body. Wouldn't surprise me if they had Guillermo and Cam out there at the same time in the starting lineup, but like, you forget about Zach pretty quickly. He can do a lot of things on a basketball court, man. I think I saw him posting earlier this summer about his goal was to shoot 40%.
Yep.
3 this year. And it's like, okay, well, if you can do that, he can be an absolute weapon.
For sure. He could be amazing for us if he's shooting 40%.
Yeah, man. So, like, with his athleticism and just ability to block anything, even if someone gets 3 feet by him, and then get out in transition, obviously. And, I think you could see a combination of Zach, Dame, Amsel, and Guillermo in that starting lineup, like, few weeks into the season. I don't know what that combination will be. I think the only people locked into the starting lineup are Jalen and Cam.
I agree. For
Other
sure.
than that, I think you could go a number of different ways, depending on Amsel's injury, how good he is, like how good he looks. Zach, maybe he's had a great year of practice. Wouldn't be shocked at that. He's a really good kid. They all seem to love him, and he's talented. He just didn't completely. I don't think it was anything he didn't do. It was just a big jump, and Capel's talked about that. Like, going from the Big South to the ACC is a huge jump. So I think there's more to be unlocked from Zach Austin. And then we talk about Guillermo and his versatility. That would be fun, though, man. I'm excited to see that first time they throw him out there at the 4 next to Cam. Like, other teams got to be like, what the hell? Like, it's like playing one of those like old Florida State teams, and they got 4 dudes that are over 6'9" at the same time.
That's what Florida did last year. They would have 2 bigs down low. It would be super hard to because we played them. They had like Tyrese Samuel and Micah Hand logged in. Like, they're both like 6'10". You couldn't get rebounds. They're bringing 2 more 7-footers off the. So that's what I like, this strategy of getting size out there.
Oh, and their guards were elite too. Do you remember that?
Walter Clayton.
Was that the Walter Clayton game? Didn't he drop like 30?
He went off every game this season. That guy's awesome.
Yeah.
But he did go off against us, though.
Yeah, I remember one of their guards had like an unbelievable game.
It was Walter Clayton. He's insane.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. They've got a lot of depth, man. It's gonna be fun to watch.
So one guy we haven't talked about at all is Marlon Barnes. I really like him coming out of high school. I think he's like a slim reaper. He can knock down 3-pointers. Where do you see him fitting in on this team?
Yeah, it's tough to say because his body type and what we've seen from him, he's listed as a forward on the roster. I think he's just clearly a wing kind of guy. And that room is pretty crowded. I just brought up all of the different possibilities, and I didn't even, I guess not all, because I didn't even mention Marlon or Jorge in that conversation. Yeah. And those are 2 more guys working out in that wing room, man. It's crowded. You bring in a guy who's 2 inches taller than you, and Amsel, with years of experience in Europe, successful experience. it's going to be tough to get playing time over him. You bring back Zach Austin, who he sat behind last year. It's going to be tough to get time over him. It's just a crowd. It's a deep wing group. I think they were really excited about Marlon when they got him. I think there's a lot to be unlocked in there with the frame, 6'6". I think he was listed around 190. So obviously, Dame Dunn's 6'5", 200. So I guess a bit more slender version of Dame Dunn in that size. But I think there's a lot to be excited about with him. I don't know how big of a role he'll have this year, but who knows? I mean, he looked great in his high school tape. He looked good, I'll say, and looked like he can do a lot of things on a basketball court. He was dunking on people, shooting step-back threes. I never got to see one of his games, so I don't have too deep of a scouting report on him. Again, seems like a great kid. Like, they've got the right people in this program right now. He had a great mindset. I think I was the only one who talked to him. We had some media, some locker room access at the ACC tournament, and I went over to him and talked to him, posted that interview a few months ago, just about redshirting and what he's learned. And I don't remember any of the answers particularly standing out, other than getting away from that conversation, feeling like, okay, like, again, he's got his head on his shoulders. He knows why he redshirted. It makes sense. He's trying to get better every single day. He's kept a pretty good attitude from what I've seen. And he's got a good frame. Like, that frame can play at this level. Obviously, you want to see him add some weight. But if he can shoot the ball well, man, if you can shoot the ball well at any level of basketball right now, you're going to get attention. You're going to get playing time. So, don't know how much we'll see out of him this year just because of the crowded wing room, like I said. But I still think it would be too early to give up on a guy.
So, I mean, everything you're saying is making me so excited because, in the past, we've always been, limited to, 7 or 8 scholarship players. But right now, we got 12 scholarship players who could all contribute. I don't think we had this much depth. I don't even know since when. So I'm, super excited for this team. So let's talk about the thing apparently that got us out of the tournament, which is the non-conference schedule.
Yeah.
Just to, recap, just go over it. We have 6 cupcake games. We're playing WVU on November 5th. I like calling it cupcakes.
I mean, yeah, you're being transparent. I love it.
Then we got the Backyard Brawl November 15th. Then we have the Greenbrier Invitational, a new Thanksgiving MTE in West Virginia. We're playing LSU on my birthday. They better win for me. Then if we would play either UCF or Wisconsin, so we might get that Dior. We might get to play Dior, which would be interesting. And then we have the home and home game against Ohio State. We're going to Columbus the day before when their football team plays Michigan. And then ACC SEC Challenge in Starkville against Mississippi State. So yeah, what's your take on this non-conference schedule, and did we solve our problem from last year?
I would say so. I would say Pitt solved its problem from the eyes. I mean, I don't think Capel thinks it was Pitt's problem in terms of scheduling the games. I think Pitt solved its problem in the eyes of bracketologists, or the committee, not even bracketologists, the committee. I think this is a great non-conference schedule. I mean, the mid-major teams that they're playing went up a level, right? Sam Houston State, Eastern Kentucky, those are some good teams. Murray State, perennially a pretty good team.
Murray State's always solid.
Right. Like, these are teams that, I mean, maybe Dustin will call them cupcakes, but, they're games. Like, I remember last year we were getting excited about the Purdue-Fort Wayne.
Yeah, I was there. They were, undefeated.
Yeah, like, they were a good major team at the beginning of the year. And, this year there's multiple of those type of games that are going to mean something. And then, obviously, they got it done scheduling the high major opponents. West Virginia, I don't think they're going to be very good. I like Darian DeVries. I think that's an awesome job. Like, I know you're probably a big.
Let me jump in real quick. I had the same mindset about West Virginia. And I looked at their team. They are not that bad. Like, Tucker DeVries is going to be one of the best players in college basketball. They got Javon Small from Oklahoma State. He's super good. They have a decent bench coming in. They have a couple of nice transfers, average 20 points a game. So, I would not sleep on them. The Backyard Brawl is always a tough game, so we're going to have to bring our best. It's going to be a tough game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overly And I am completely impartial to the brawl and everything. I mean, I work with Ethan Bach, who covers West Virginia. And, I mean, all of our conversations are about what's going on in the portal, what's going on in West Virginia, Pitt, everything. So like, feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on their program. Love their staff. Like they seem like great guys. I've met a few of them, talked to a few of them in the past. I just don't know if this group is there yet.
Okay.
I like their strategy of bringing in like transfers who have been at lower levels and been really good. Like you said, Toby Ukani, we saw him a few years ago in Pittsburgh. Like he was great at a lower level. Yusufu has been all around the place.
I love Yesufu. He's good.
Yeah, Yusufu. Yeah, I mean he's been solid. Javon Small is the guy on there that I think is like, okay, wow, that's a great get. Like that's a high major guy who probably had a bunch of other high major looks, big time offers. Amani Hansberry out of Illinois
Mm-hmm.
was a
They got
highly rated
They
guy.
got Sensier Harris from Illinois as well. He's kind of a sleeper player for me. I remember when he was at Illinois. He was kind of like that feisty defender who will pick you up 94 feet. So he could be a perfect like throwback press Virginia type player. So I'm even like sleeping. People are sleeping on him as well.
Didn't he redshirt last year at Illinois?
I have like no idea. Like he kind of like disappeared.
I gotta ask my buddy who is a big fan of Illinois. I'm pretty sure Sincere redshirted at Illinois, and don't quote me on that. Anyone watch it, but yeah, an interesting story. I mean, they bring in Jaden Stone too. He's
Mm-hmm.
probably the best scorer on one of the worst teams in college basketball from Detroit.
Oh yeah.
I just think they need a little bit of time. It kind of reminds me of one of Capel's earlier rosters at Pitt, where like, okay, yeah, there's clearly guys who've proven themselves in college basketball in this roster. You got a coach who's proven himself at the mid-major level, but putting that all together is no easy task. A coach learning Big 12 basketball and 9, whatever the rotation is going to be, new players learning Big 12 basketball. It's going to be tough, especially when your leader, Tucker, I guess the Javon Small, that's why I said, like, that's a great get because he knows the level. He knows Big 12 ball. Tucker, it's like, okay, he's an awesome player to watch. He's so fun, and I love him as a college basketball, like, fan. Just watching him is going to be fun. But the Big 12 is a different beast. Like, how is that transition going to go? We'll see. I just think it's going to take him a little bit of time. I wouldn't be surprised if Pitt is pretty safe favorite in that game going into it. With that being said, as Noah Hiles always says, it's a rivalry game. You got to throw the record books out the window. So, who knows what the spread will be there, what will happen in that game. But getting back into the schedule, Ohio State, Mississippi State, those are two great road games to add to your resume. It's kind of crazy to say, but even like a close loss in those games like looks fine on a resume. Wins at either of those would be a big plus. You'd almost guarantee that those will be quad one opportunities in the net rankings. They both got good teams, man. They're both really solid programs right now. Diebler taking over at Ohio State's definitely interesting. I was at DePaul practice a few weeks ago, saw Chris Holtman doing his thing. So that's going to be a different a style around there with a lot of the same core principles, but they've got talent, man. Like Ohio State should be pretty good. And What is that? Is that Black Friday, that game?
I think it is Black Friday.
I think it's
the
right
game
after
before the
Thanksgiving.
game.
Right, yeah. So, it should be a real test in Columbus as well as that Mississippi State game. And if I'm not mistaken, they've got I think 5 straight. Like I haven't even gotten in the MTE. Yeah, they've got LSU, UCF, Wisconsin, Ohio State, Mississippi State. Then they have they always got that first ACC game kind of thrown into December somewhere. It's Virginia Tech. So like in Blacksburg, you've got 5 straight high major games really early in the season, which you don't find very often. Now I know UCF and Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin's been a really good program lately, but I know UCF and Wisconsin, it's not like you're playing in the Champions Classic, like Kansas, Duke, Michigan, Kentucky, whatever. But like, great job, I think, in making this schedule to to achieve the goal that they wanted to achieve, which they've told us multiple times is leave no doubt. That's the team's mantra this year. It seems like that was their goal. Like, all right, you cannot tell us we didn't try to schedule a good schedule. You cannot tell us that we weren't good enough. So I think the foundation's there, man. I mean, the ACC, I had them. I believe I didn't fill out a poll or anything for the preseason poll for the ACC, but I think they're at least a top 6 team in the league.
Yep.
I think it's all there, man. The schedule lays out well for them. There's early tests. It's a pretty solid MTE. It would look great if they won that MTE. And yeah, there's good coaches. I know Tony Bennett's gone, but there's good coaches that they're going to be playing this year. Like there's good programs that they're going to be playing against. Louisville, like we could even talk conference ball. Louisville, like I think they're going to be much better. I think everyone thinks they're going to be much better. Just getting them off that bottom floor of the conference, like I think we're going to look back 10 years from now and be like, what in the hell happened? How in the world did like a program with a history like Louisville end up that low on the ACC rankings for the past few years? Like, unbelievable to see that. So I hope Pat Kelsey, I'm a big fan of his,
Me too.
gets their program back to where it was before. That's just another added layer of depth to the ACC that's been missing the past few years. But yeah, man, I think Pitt's got its work cut out for them. It'll be a tough, challenging schedule. But like you said, there are some cupcakes in there. And there's a good chance they go into that Virginia Tech game with, I mean, at least one like very good road high major win, 1 or 2 wins in the MTE, and an undefeated in the cupcake games record. So all things considered, I think they'll be going into that ACC slate with maximum of 3 to 4 losses, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than that.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, I think they're going to be WVU. I think they should win all those bye games, the John Rothsteinism. I think we should beat LSU. I think I don't know, you'd think they would have some better, I mean, they have Cam Carter coming in, there's some other transfers. I think we should win that game, but one team I'm scared of in this tournament is UCF. I think they're one of my sleeper teams. I think I haven't released my bracketology yet, but I have UCF in the first 4 out. I mean, they're returning Darius Johnson, Jalen Sellers, 2 really good players from last year. They have Jordan Ivy Curry coming in from UTSA. He's a really good player. They have other transfers coming in like Keyshawn Hall from George Mason, and they have Dior and Mikey Williams. They have a really solid team, and if Constance's always going to be a solid program, so I think UCF could be a sleeper team. I think that could be a really tough game if we do play them. They're a Big 12 team. Then Ohio State, I mean, I don't even know why they're not ranked. You have Bruce Thornton and Michi Johnson is one of the best players in college basketball last season. Diebler, when he took the job, all they did was win. He did amazing in the portal, getting Michi Johnson, Micah Parrish, Aaron Bradshaw, a guy I love from Kentucky, Sean Stewart, a guy who didn't get a chance at Duke, who's one of the most athletic players in the country. Then Mississippi State they're really good. Their backcourt's amazing. Kanye Clary from Penn State. Josh Hubbard was one of my favorite players to watch last season. He was one of the best freshmen. They got Claudell Harris, a guy I really like from Boston College. Riley Kugel coming off the bench. So we had definitely... This is a very tough non-conference schedule, and I guess my prediction would be 9-2. What do you were saying you're probably going to lose around 3 to 4 games, or?
Yeah, I think that would be the maximum. I think I could see them like catching fire and losing 1 game in this non-conference slate. Like you said, like UCF, I mean, even Wisconsin, like those teams
they're good.
They're not just a win in the win column. It's easy to say that because it's kind of the slash right now. You're just like, oh yeah, Pitt will win that game. Those are 2 good teams, 2 good programs. I wasn't as familiar with that UCF roster as you were.
They're good.
I mean, Keyshawn Hall coming in, Jordan Ivy Curry, and then you've just got so much like potential. Dior, Mikey Williams, and JJ Taylor, like those guys have been hyped up for years now.
JJ Taylor's a stud.
Yeah, it's like if they can put it together this year for UCF, they could be a really fun team to watch. Could be a really fun game if Pitt meets them at the Greenbrier. So, yeah, I mean, I won't put an exact number on it, I guess, until we start to see some of these games and some of these teams play, including Pitt. including tomorrow at practice. But I do think they're challenging themselves, man. It's going to be an intense non-conference. It's not gonna be anything. They're not gonna be lacking any challenges here.
Yeah, so you already kind of talk about the ACC, so let's talk about the ACC a little bit more. I
Yeah.
think the two clear favorites are Duke and North Carolina. I mean, Duke is adding Cooper Flag, and it's not even just Cooper Flag. Their recruiting class is amazing. They have Kaman Malua. I don't know
Oh
if
my
that's how you
God,
say it, from
he's a
South
stud.
Sudan. He's a stud.
Yeah,
Then they
yeah.
have Con Knuppel. John Rothstein was saying this guy's a star. Isaiah Evans, like baby Brandon Ingram. And they have Darren Harris, who's like he's a lights out shooter from the DMV. Then UNC's returning RJ Davis. So those two teams are definitely the two favorites. Then I would say the tournament. I think Miami's really good.
Yeah.
We're gonna be a tournament team. Wake, NC State, Louisville, and Clemson. So I would have 8 teams going to March Madness from the ACC. I mean, what do you think? Do you think the ACC is deeper? And how do you feel about my projections of 8 teams making the tournament?
Did you have Virginia in there?
I don't. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have them making it even if Tony Bennett's there. I think their best player is Isaac McNeely, and he's morely just like a complimentary piece shooter. I didn't see them making the tournament regardless.
I agree with you. I think I wrote about that this summer. I wasn't the biggest fan of that roster. I heard the guys on 24/7 talking about them yesterday, and they really seem to think that front court and that whole team has got a lot to prove and a lot of experience. Um, I don't think like Jalen Worley and as Isaac McNeely, like sure we've seen them around, but any of the other guys on that team, I don't think really jump off the page to me. They're going to need some of these guys to really pan out, like TJ Power,
I
who
like him.
yeah, he was like a late blooming 5-star, I remember. Got a bunch of offers right at the end of his recruitment. I do like, some of the transfers they got, like you were talking about. But it's going to be tough for them, especially now without Tony Bennett. Other than that, not too high on Syracuse. I don't really love that team. I don't know how that'll completely work out. Jaquan Carlos is awesome, and I'm the biggest advocate for going for the mid-major transfers and the guys who've actually proven it in college basketball. Eddie Lampkin's fun. The rest of their team, JJ Starling, like hopefully for the sake of the
Donnie
ACC.
Freeman he was such a
Yeah,
great player. I think he's gonna have a monster freshman season for Syracuse. I think he went to IMG. He was awesome. He's like
right.
the only hope for Syracuse in my opinion. I don't think they'll be any good, but he's gonna be a top. He might be a lottery pick. I'm really high on him.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean JJ Starling like had all that hype coming into college, and
Yeah, he did.
he's been good. He's been good, but I think you want to see him get to that elite level, that all ACC level. Other than that, I mean, the only reason I went to Virginia and Syracuse right away is because I pretty much agree with you near the top. I really like, man, I mean, that Duke roster is going to be fun to watch.
Insane.
You can go through like the players you did, like 3 or 4 guys, and without even mentioning Caleb Foster, Tyrese Proctor, look at their roster, Sion James from
Yep.
Tulane. But yeah, man, that big man they got, absolute stud, like freak.
Yeah.
He's a freak. Cooper Flag is Cooper Flag. Con Knuppel seems, or however you say it, Kneppel,
Yeah, I don't know.
seems like he's himself kind of like a lottery pick. Like I've seen a lot about him in
Yeah.
recent weeks where like, wow, he's the second best guy in the scrimmages at Duke, and that's scary because a lot of people don't even think he's gonna start. UNC, I like UNC. I don't think you can like I can't really nitpick a way to play devil's advocate here on their roster. Seth Trimble scored 33 points in
Saw
their
that.
exhibition the other day. Like that was certainly eye-catching. Didn't really expect that out of him. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I swear I'd seen him go off another time, and I was like, oh yeah, he might be really good, but just didn't expect him to be that much.
Me either.
I know RJ Davis was out, but you got RJ Davis. You're going to be in the mix for the ACC title. He's been there, done that with, going far in the tournament, winning the Player of the Year. They've got some exciting young pieces. Jalen Withers is going to be fun for them. Fennell and Lubin. They've got a good squad, so I like UNC. I like Duke.
How about
Wake
Cade
Forest,
Tyson?
Kate
I like
Tyson
him from
too. Yeah,
Belmont.
don't sleep on Kate Tyson. Another guy, mid-major transfer going up. Like, obviously, love to see that. Yeah, man. Wake Forest is like Hunter Salas is one of the most exciting players you can watch. I
Yep.
mean, I know the perennial games that are crowded at Pitt that are sold out are usually like the Dukes, the North Carolinas, the Virginias, maybe Syracuse. But I don't know off the top of my head, but if Wake Forest comes to town, man, like that game should be packed. I feel like that competition, the matchup has become a real, strong, not rivalry, I would say, but like those games are always great. Both programs are kind of in similar spots where like they really want to break through and get to that next level of like every year they're in the tournament. They've got a ton of talent. I love Cam Hildreth. Saw him throw down like a
Yep.
left-handed tomahawk dunk on someone 2 years ago at the ACC tournament. I was like fell in love with the guy. Efton Reed is Efton Reed. He's a really good player as much as Pitt fans don't like him. Um, you know, Wake Forest, like him. Clemson's Clemson. Like, Ian Shefflin is unbelievable. We saw that last year. What do you have, like 16 rebounds or
Blue
something?
guy.
Yeah, glue guy, man. And their backcourt's really fun. I think Clemson's got a chance to be a top 3 team in the league. Um, just going on the line, man, like Miami, I haven't heard much about them, but like that Jaleel Bethea kid, people are
He's
saying
awesome.
he's a lottery pick. Like he was at the end of last summer. Everyone was like, "This kid's the best shooter in the country on the EYBL." At least I believe he played on that circuit. Matthew Cleveland proven himself in the ACC. Nigel Pack's been good for years. Brandon Johnson, that ECU transfer who Pitt was in on for a
Yep.
while. I think they're excited about him. He kind of fits the mold of like a Blake Hinson type for like body wise and position, but I don't know if he can shoot that far out and that much. Lynn Kidd, obviously, again another proven ACC guy. So it's like these teams are good. You
You
can't.
forgot someone about on Miami who I really like is Jalen Blackman.
Yeah,
Has many threes as Blake did last season. He was averaging 21 a game at Stetson. I
yeah,
think him and Pack could be one of the best backcourts in the whole country. How many threes they're going to launch? I'm pretty excited to watch Miami.
they're loaded. I mean, I guess so. Then you would go Pack, Blackman, probably Bethea, Cleveland, Kidd.
Yep, that's my lineup projection.
Yeah,
That is some team.
yeah, that's a lot of talent.
Yeah.
That's a lot of scoring. So they should be really fun. You can't count out NC State after that run. I'm not one to be like, all right, they made a run in the NCAA tournament. Let's rank them first overall. Um, that's not going to happen, or like top 10 or whatever. But they've got Kevin Keats done a great job there over the past year. Obviously, seems like Capel's got a lot of respect for him and what he does. And I like their roster. I don't think it jumps off the page as much as last year, with DJ Burns and DJ Horn both leaving, among other guys. Like DJ Burns was an absolute phenomenon.
Awesome.
Uh, awesome player to watch. DJ Horn was great too.
Mm.
So like they lose a lot. They got some guys from the portal as well, so I'm not completely counting them out. I do think they'll be near that bubble or in the tournament from the ACC. And yeah, man, I mean, Georgia Tech's a program that I still feel like is moving in the right direction. Uh,
Sleeper.
yeah, I think people are sleeping on them. Notre Dame, again, like year 2 of Shrewsbury, they brought back a lot.
Yep.
Brought in some transfers as well, but they brought back a lot, man. Like Notre Dame's guys, Marcus Burton's going to be an all ACC kid. Yeah, they've got that Princeton shooter, Michalowski. So they should be solid. So like, there's teams, man. This league feels deeper this year. I think I haven't even mentioned SMU. By the way, I love SMU's roster, but I
Boopy
don't.
Miller's there.
Yeah, I know. Like, I'll take Boopy Miller on my team any day of the week. I grew up watching him in like high school in Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love that guy. But don't know how that whole team's gonna work. It's kind of like that's like what you were talking about earlier with Mick Cronin's. Like that SMU team is like almost completely new.
Yeah.
Those guys are coming in from all over the country. So gotta wait to see how they look. But They could be really fun. Boopy leading the way would be awesome. Andy Enfield's well known as a good coach.
Forgot he's there.
Yeah, man. I mean, some of the other rosters I'm looking through, Cal, Boston College, Virginia Tech. Pretty confident that those three will be near the bottom. I think that's a good draw for Pitt to get Virginia Tech on the road first ACC opponent. I just don't think they're as solid as last year. I mean, they lost Couture, Sean Padula, and Lynn Kidd, and it's like I feel
Yeah,
like
they
last
got
year.
destroyed in the transfer portal for like no reason. I didn't understand that.
Yeah, you wouldn't think, right? Like Sean Padula going to Ole Miss just feels I don't know different.
Yeah,
An ACC kid leaving like that, who was a great player for Virginia Tech.
yeah,
I
he
mean,
is good.
those were like the three names that I was saying at that Virginia Tech game. I remember sitting there. I was like, gosh, Padula, Couture, and Kidd are the names that I'm hearing every 2 seconds on the PA system. So they're going to have a tough go. I mean, anything's possible during the season, man. Like we were just saying, Pitt was projected 14 a couple years ago, went to the tournament. Stanford, their big man, I know, is like an all ACC contender.
Raynaud, he's really good.
Yeah, he looks really solid. But other than that, man, like Louisville being back, at least what people think being back looks like, with an exciting coach and culture that they're building around there. Miami, I think, being back in position to really be a strong team, like get back to that Final Four level that they were at a few years ago. And then the classics. I mean, over the past few years, it's been Clemson, it's been Duke, it's been Carolina. You got Pitt, you got Wake Forest, kind of in that knocking on the door phase. So yeah, man, that's a lot of words. I was just scrolling through all the teams in the ACC, trying to think of everyone I could on these teams. But yeah, man, it's gonna be a really fun year. Like I'm jacked up, as you can tell.
I am too. Yeah, just, I guess my sleeper, I think Miami, I think they're a borderline top
Yeah,
25 team. You might be surprised with this, but I think Clemson's getting a little bit overhyped from last season. I just think
really.
losing PJ Hall is such a big loss, and
Joe
Chase
Girard
Hunter, they're
too.
relying on him to put up a lot of points. I'm not sure if he's that type of player. I just feel like they have a very good defensive and oriented team, but I think this team could maybe have some trouble scoring. They might rely on Shefflin to score a little bit more, but I think he's more of a glue guy. And Zachary's a really good player, but I'm not sure he's that scoring type of player. So I think they might be a little bit overhyped. And I would say Duke is the best team in the ACC. So yeah, I agree. It's gonna be an awesome season, and I agree about Louisville. I think Kelsey's built a really good team in his first year. Like Terrence Edwards is a beast. He's built such a lot of depth on that team. So I think it's gonna be super fun. And yeah, do you have any other last thoughts about the ACC, or disagree with anything I said?
Oh man, I don't think anything stands out to disagree with. Let's see if I could think of like a hot take as we're leaving
I
here.
guess I do have Clemson making the tournament, but as like a
What's
last
your hot
four in.
take? Is that they're barely in?
Yeah, I guess
I
so.
just think Brunell is a great coach. I think
Yeah.
they do things the right way around there. Like I think they have a lot of respect from coaches in the ACC and coaches around the country, just from who I've talked to about them and who they've brought in. Um, and yeah, I think I don't know. You make a good point. Like Joe Girard's gone too. PJ,
I forgot about him. Jeez.
yeah, like those dudes were weapons last year. I think Girard had like 25 last year against Pitt at Pitt.
Really good.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like those guys, you're gonna miss them a lot. So it's gonna be different. But yeah, I don't have anything too steaming hot right now. Maybe a few games in before any hot
Yeah.
takes come out. But as a whole, I think the ACC should get more teams in this year. I think it should be around like 6 to 8
I have
teams in
8.
the
I'm hoping
tournament.
that's the number.
Yeah, I mean, you would think based on what we just went through. So should be exciting. There's a lot of good players in the league. Like we got potentially the best player in college basketball, what some people seem to think. A one and done, number one overall pick kind of freshman with Cooper Flagg is in the league that we'll watch. So that'll be fun. Um, a lot of different storylines, man. Like even with Pitt. You've got so many different things going on. The whole Jalen Lowe storyline. Can he become an NBA draft pick in 2 years? Can they get back to the tournament? Because if they get back to the tournament this year, I don't want to look too far ahead, of course, but 2 tournaments in 3 years, that will look like 3 straight 21 seasons. Who knows? It might be 3 straight years in the top 4 of the ACC. Like, your recruiting starts to take off a bit from there. Who knows what this new AD, what the NIL will look like, what the collective will look like. Who knows what the actual NCAA, what everything is going to look like a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's a lot of really interesting storylines to follow. It's definitely a good year to be locked in to basketball around here.